Hello and welcome to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Ben.
And I'm Chris.
And thank you for joining us for our Fremantle Dockers podcast, Chris.
Yeah, we're back. We're back at it. And it's good to be doing it in the daytime, actually. The sun's out and we're in a nice air-conditioned room doing some podcasting.
Yes, it's nice to have the AC.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Before we get started, first thing first is the audio. We've obviously got a new system and stupid me tried to make a few changes, which I think actually made it worse. So we're back to kind of a default. So I do apologise for the Essendon and Collingwood if it was a little bit painful, but hey, you know, sometimes you shouldn't just tinker with things, I think.
Yeah, you get a little bit sidetracked.
Sometimes. But look, let's get on to our socials. It is, we're Supercoach Insider. It is SC Insider 100.
Yep.
And all of our audio platforms you can find us. So Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Twitch.
iTunes.
Is it Stitcher?
We always get...
I was waiting for you to jump
Google
in. Chris.
Podcast, everything. Yeah, all that stuff. And of course, you can find us on YouTube as well. Just search for a Supercoach Insider.
Yep.
Pretty good stuff.
For those on YouTube, please do subscribe, like, follow, comment.
All the above.
Really loving the interaction at the moment, everyone, guys. So do appreciate it. But Fremantle, they are a tough one to pick, I think, this year, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a little bit of list turnover. Obviously, they've had guys like McCarthy and Hogan out of the club. Now, their best 18 is still really, really solid. And I think that it's just getting better every year because their young core growing through that midfield is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So,
yep, definitely a slow rebuild. I mean, after all, they are 2 hours behind, Chris.
Well done, sir. But look, they surprised teams last year with their competitiveness, and I think this year they might go that little bit better. I anticipate them to be just outside the 8. So 9th, 10th, 11th, potentially not. I don't think as low as 12, but I think that's where they're going to be.
Competing with Collingwood for the 8?
Probably, yeah. I think they're going to be around that group of teams there. Again, if they can keep their guys in the park. They've had some really bad injuries with their defence, especially last year. Guys like Pearce, unfortunately, who can't get a run at it. Hamling as well, probably their best defender. So there are guys in their system that they really need to get back and into on the park every single week to give them a chance at being really ultra competitive and potentially a taste of finals football. So we'll see how they go this year.
Yep, no, I think that's fair. And they're definitely interesting to watch. I find they're more interesting to watch than some other teams. And they have some guns, so it's going to be interesting.
Is it pretty much just because you like watching Fife do anything?
Anything except play forward.
It's just, you just want to see his arms with no sleeves for Fife, that's for sure. It's just all guns, all out. Oh, yes, he's a good-looking lad. Anyway... I need that Brucey delicious one.
Oh, delicious.
Oh, it's delicious, isn't it?
Yes, thanks, Brucey. All right. So where do we go? Into the rookies. So they had a few picks in the national draft this year, and they were really, really precise with what they did in the national draft, and they got some really good value in the back end of it. So I'll briefly go through it. But they picked up Heath Chapman at 14, Nathan Driscoll at 27, Brandon Walker at 50, and Joel Weston at 55. And they also went into the rookie draft and picked up Treacy or Treacy, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, in the rookie draft as a forward, and he may even surprise with some game time this year, so we'll see how that goes. Now, the reason why I say that they had a little bit of luck in the draft is that their last 2 picks, Brandon Walker and Joel Weston, were both academy picks, and so even though they went at 50 and 55, they're both tipped to go around that 25 to 35 mark, so they've got a bit of value out of their draft.
Yep.
Not bad. So starting with Heath Chapman, so he's probably the one that's most likely, but he's a third tall style defender. And with obviously Hamling and Pearce set to come back, and do we have an injury update on those guys? And potentially... we might have to wait until pre-season to really find out where they're at with things. But I haven't
heard too much regarding those players at the moment. So I think most of them are pretty fit or on the way back, except for the few which we'll get to shortly.
Yep, beautiful. So I can't imagine him playing without an injury to those guys. They've also got, of course, Griffin Logue, who can play either on a tall or as an intercepting defender, and, of course, Luke Ryan, who's probably their premium intercepting defender. And then they've got their running halfbacks in Hayden Young and Nathan Wilson, who pretty much aren't going to be going anywhere. So I just don't think that there's a role for him in the early side. You're welcome. That was nice. But, he for the Colts, he dominated there. He averaged, 22.4 touches, 10.6 intercept possessions, and 4.6 intercept marks. So someone who's obviously going to be SC relevant at some point in his career. So definitely one to watch. And at 148K, he might be worth it due to roll. But a lot to play out before we go through that. Briefly on the other guys, I don't think that these guys are going to be playing too heavily into calculations, but you've got Nathan O'Driscoll. He's a halfback turned midfielder, 187 centimetres, who actually grew 6 centimetres since he was 16 years old and playing at the National Championship. So he's now 187 and 76 kilos. He'll be playing halfback or wing, high endurance, but likely well behind the pecking order. They've got quite a lot of wing types there at Freo, so I don't imagine that he's going to be one to just jump out the box. Brandon Walker, he was a academy pick, as I said. He's a running defender as well, and again, they are stocked well at that mark, unless, of course, injury strikes. And Joel Weston, who is very highly talented and really sought after. Problem is, he's 172 centimetres and 68 kilos. So he was obviously playing a lot of midfield, hard at it, tackles hard, blah, blah. But at AFL level, can you do that at 172 centimetres?
That's a light frame too, Chris.
So probably going to be one to just apply his talents as a small forward, but we'll have to see how his development goes. But they tipped him to, as small as he is, still tipped to go early in the second round. So
68 kilos. He's going to have to bulk up. What do you think he'd be eating, Chris?
He might be on the, what's the Carlin diet or whatever. Eat whatever you want times 2.
You could do better than that, couldn't you?
Probably.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
You surprised me with that one. That was good.
The meatloaf.
That was meatloaf. Ma, we want it now.
Hey, you have to eat.
Oh, well done, sir. You led into that. You're like horse to water over here, and I was like, drink, sir, drink.
Yes.
All right, all good. As mentioned, Treaky. So the valuable thing about Treaky this year and why he's arguably going to be the most selected player this year is a 102K ruck forward. So you get that flexibility, and he's also the basement price, but he's also got the potential to play sometime this year. So I don't think there's anyone that's going to be running without him at R3. I think he's a super valuable pick.
Yep, heavily owned already.
Yeah, hugely owned. So just lock him away and see how his season progresses. I don't think he's going to be playing round 1, but I think he does get game time this year.
Well, it's nice to have a 102K player that you could actually be of use.
Yeah. Now, the one that is probably the most likely to debut is a rookie that's been a couple of years in the system called Luke Valente. I've been hot on him for a while.
Oh, it's delicious, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think last year I went a bit crazy about him on the pod. I had him. I literally had him lined up until he didn't even feature at all, and he's just got an absolute body ready for, especially now, for AFL football.
Yep, it actually came out in the articles that Fremantle were writing. Valente's appeared to put on size ahead of his third preseason and impressed as he chases his debut. So very interesting there.
And look, there is potential for spots, even in their best 22, just on the fringes. There's every chance that he might get a run. And I think that there could be a round 1 selection if he has a good preseason. So definitely one on your watch list.
Yep. There's definitely a couple of vulnerable older players and a couple that, because they have quite a lot of versatility in their team as well.
Do.
So there's a lot of shifts. So Conker could easily be gone. Bewley could be out. There's quite a lot of players that could actually fill into those forward and wing roles. Yeah,
absolutely. And obviously Freo are wanting to blood their youth. They want to get these guys through their system as well. And like we've already mentioned, the New rookies that didn't even play last year, they're going to struggle with jumping straight into AFL football. But the guys that have been in the system a couple of years, even if they haven't had a debut, at least they've been training as an AFL player. They know the systems, and they've got, last year, even though they weren't playing, they were still training as AFL players.
Correct.
They were still into that system. So
I think that's the big theme for this year in general for me. We spoke about last pod or one of the earlier ones. Short turnaround. They haven't had much football last year, so they're going to have a lot of catching up to do. I don't see many of them being game ready for round 1, which is really hard because I'm trying to not go guns and rookies full out. I'm trying to kind of go a couple guns, couple of mids to try and balance that cash a little bit, because I just think if you go 3 and 3 with 2 on the bench, 5 rookies in the forward line, 5 rookies in defence, it's going to be hard for you this year.
Well, I've been tinkering around with my side, and then I look down and I've got like 6 mid prices, and I go, "What the hell am I doing?"
Yeah,
but it seems to be the way to go this year. I don't know. It's very early to see. I really wanted to play more guns and rookie strategy this year, but I'm just starting to get a little bit worried about the rookies. I know it's early. We only get 1 game sample size.
Yep, it's hard.
And then the rest of them are going to be intra-club clashes and reports potentially. I'm hoping that I know some of the clubs do it where they actually live stream on their website the intra clubs.
Yep.
I hope that we get that this year, and I hope we get as much as we can. We're going to have to rely a lot on the community out there that are actually going
people
to
going to
watch
all the clubs themselves accurately reporting, which is difficult.
So it's going to be an interesting preseason. But look, that's why people are here.
And I spoke to Pistol as well. Shout out to Pistol from Dr. Supercoach. Even then, I've done all this analysis and looking at overpriced and all these different areas where you have to they're overinflated. But then at the same time, I'm like, I don't like that many people underneath them. So it's this hard one where you'll have to.
It's this big gap.
Well, you don't have to, but it's like, okay, well, at the moment I'm overpaying for a couple of people who I am quite sure will actually still finish in the top handful of people on their line.
Yep.
Instead of trying to go, oh, here's value, and then end up with a whole team of value, and then you have to upgrade them all. It's a combination there's
this weird so there's this really great low end value, and then there's some top guys that are well overpriced, but at least they're safe picks, and then in the middle is a splattering of guys that have question marks. Yeah, and that's this season in a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Do you have that one?
No, I actually tried, but it was a bit messy.
Fair enough. So best 22, obviously this Freo are a little bit harder to pick this year. So I don't know if this is going to be accurate, but I'll give it a whirl anyway. So I've gone with Hayden Young starting. I think he will be starting this year. Pearce, of course, if he's healthy. Wilson there as well. I've gone with Stephen Hill still coming off that half back line if he's fit again. But I can't see them not playing Hill if he's not fit. He's a talent, so
I think he played back pocket a little more last year, so it depends how his body is.
Yeah. Hamling, of course, and Ryan. Across the wing, Akers showed that he's very, very capable on the wing and played very well. I've got Brayshaw and I've got Conker sitting in there as well. Half forward line, I've got Walters, Taberner and Mundy. And then in the forward line, I've got Fife, Lobb and Schultz. So it'll be interesting to see just how much forward time Fife takes up. That will be very interesting.
What combination do you think would be ideal if you want to actually pick him?
I don't think any combination's good.
Well, if he rests forward, then that's a good option. But
so if he's playing 10-15% forward, then he's basically playing 100% mid-time because he always has rested forward. That's not going to happen. I think it's probably going to be 50-50 or maybe even 60-40 forward.
60-40? Well, you know what they say.
60% of the time, it works every time.
Wow, you really came to this prepared. I'm just, you know what? I mean, either A, it's probably a combination of these two. You've got way too much time on your hands. You're just burning it at both ends at the moment. I don't know. I love it. Thank you very much. That was good.
You better lock it up. No, you lock it up. Lock it up.
You lock it up.
Lock it up.
Hang on, last one.
Wait a minute. I thought we were stuck in a blender. Now we're saving lives?
What? That's so good.
All right.
Wow, you really went to town. All right, cool. And on the interchange bench, I've got Tucker, Aish, Logue, and Blakely. So guys that can play all over the park generally, which is good. Missing from that lineup with obviously a little bit of depth, you do have that Valenti. So I think Valenti could come in. Blakely has been bad for a long time.
Yep.
I'm not sure if he's even really best 22. I've thrown him in there and I'm just like, ooh, I don't know.
He must be ready to fight for it though, because he could have got traded. And mind you, fairly new coach at the club, so maybe he's trying to work his way in. Mm-hmm. He could definitely be a role player though.
Yep. Ethan Hughes has proven that he can play at AFL level. I just think Hayden Young's ahead of him, and they're Stephen Hill as well. And their back six is pretty settled if they don't have any injuries. Sturt, Collier, Duman, and Bewley as well. All depth players that can come in and make an impact this year.
Yep. For me, I think Sturt and Valenti will probably be the first off the rank.
Yep.
Mundy and Conker, I think, are probably probably more vulnerable. Mundy, I doubt will play every game.
Yeah, and Sturt's one that I think he will play quite a few games this year. I'm not sure if you want to play Sturt and Fife in the same forward line. They're very similar style players. So, again, it's all going to depend on what Fife's doing with his...
True. And even then, it could change game by game as well.
Could be,
It could be
absolutely.
a way to manage him to get longevity. So he might play more mid-rotation some games and then kind of flex out a bit in others.
Yep, absolutely. And that leads us on to the premiums. So I suppose we start with the big one that we've already touched on a little bit, Nathan Fife.
Nathaniel Fife. Okay, so extremely good to watch. Okay, passes the eye test. So he did average 120 in 2019. Played 20 games that year, played 14 in the year just gone, missed 3 games, averaged 113.2. He actually went down time on ground, which is interesting because I guess maybe he missed some games from injury, but he actually went down 4.3%, considering he played a lot more forward and people were actually tossing him up to be a forward in 2021. It's a little bit interesting for that, but... he is tipped to go forward more in 2021, which I find...
As can be seen by his huge shoulders.
He has bulked.
I don't even understand how you can have huge shoulders and then you come back after a preseason and you have huge shoulders.
He's big.
If anyone hasn't seen the photo of Fife training, just get on that. It's good gear. It's good gear.
Yep. Injured in round 4 on 71, true average of 116.5. So there is a little bit of value there. 7 scores of 120 plus. So again, this year you could probably actually pick him up as a VC, which is funny. For me, I'd actually love him as a VC, and you could get a 120 probably half of the time. It's actually not a bad deal. Because he is probably at this point tipped playing forward more, I think he is probably not a great option in standard. I was really hoping he was playing midfield because I would have loved to have picked him. I honestly do. But if he's playing more forward, I don't see how I can. He probably still plays and averages maybe around the same, though. I can't see him going below 110. I honestly can't.
Well, I think he's got a scope from going anywhere from 100 to 120. And it's all going to be role dependent. And it also, what comes into play definitely is how good are Fremantle? How good are they? Because if he's playing forward, he needs to kick goals. He needs to take contested grabs and he needs to be a focal point of the offense. If he is that, then he can still definitely average quite well. But the question mark is, do I want to pay $610K for a guy that might average 110?
Yeah, it's risky. Well, not only that. Okay.
You want a sure thing at $610K.
Well, you do. And it's funny because the flip side is that you might have, say, Taberner and Lob start coming out and killing it, right? Sturt's backing them up really well.
Honestly, Taberner has really picked it up the last season or two, taking grabs left, right and centre, hitting the logos. I actually really like Taberner.
So if the forwards are doing what they need to bring it to ground, creating options, getting marks, kicking goals, and the midfield aren't producing, so Chera can't run out games, Brayshaw's lost his mojo a little bit, Fife's going back in. Do you know what I mean? So it's really what the team needs, and they don't want to bang him up at the contest, but at the same time, whatever's best for the team. So he could easily switch roles.
He could. The thing is, they have good enough midfielders. Chera, Brayshaw and Sarong are absolutely elite. They're all fantastic mids. They do not need Nathan Fife in there anymore.
All high picks too.
Yeah, they don't need him. Tucker is a fantastic midfielder. They have the talent around the ball. They do not need Nathan Fife there. They need him up forward. So I can't see them budging from this stance, and I think they're going to go the whole season with it. He obviously will play midfield. He'll get rotational minutes. So will Mundy. So will Walters. They'll all get time in there. How much time? That's the question. And is it enough to bump his average up?
Hell, Fife as a forward in 2022 would be amazing. Next one is Luke Ryan. He's 576K, defender, super reliable. Even in 2019, 2018, he still had some really high patches. And this year he kind of strung it all together. Probably, again, you're looking at the type of ball use and the player he was. If you look at he went up about, 12 points in average. Mm-hmm. You look at Lloyd and how he actually went up in average as well. Racks up the ball, shorter games, more scaling, and absolutely, killed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he's probably due for a slight digression, because again he was one of those intercepting defenders that took advantage of that scaling. There's a couple of things going against him this year. I think Hayden Young's inclusion into that best 22, which I think will definitely happen, will make him the primary kick-out taker and designated kicker from defence, whereas he has obviously been that guy for quite a while now. Even though he's not the best of kicks, but, a great short kick. It does set up the play, and it leads to how they're actually moving the ball out of defence. I just think that moving forward, that will change to Young. So unfortunately, that goes against him. What does work for him, though, is obviously having Pearce and Hamling back means he doesn't have to play as much lockdown anymore. And he was actually forced to play on bigger guys for a lot of the year and try and sag off and take marks. Whereas this year, he will be probably roaming free. That's the ideal role for him, is that third tall intercepting defender. So
he could be a Lloyd 2.0, to be fair. He still apparently has come back. He's really impressed with his work ethic, and he's been really influential on the younger players. But what we look at is he actually went up by 6% time on ground. So in a shorter format, that's why we're saying that he's actually possibly overpriced. But he's underrated. I honestly think each year the season starts and he's probably 2 to 5% owned. No one touches him.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to change much to this time too. Because
they're looking everywhere else. I'll go Laird.
$570K, that's Laird.
Yeah.
I mean, who are you choosing him over?
You'd have to choose him over Laird, Whitfield. It's hard, right? Yeah.
Yeah, difficult to do.
And he's not even that much.
I think he's probably going to be easy top 10 and probably top 6. So he's not a bad selection. No. It's just...
Not a bad selection, and I think here's the worst part though. He's only 75 less than Lloyd, essentially, and you just pay the extra money to go to Lloyd.
Yeah, okay, so the question is, are you confident in him averaging exactly what he averaged last year, which is 107?
No, maybe 100 to 103 for me.
I think he's got the scope to go 100 to 110, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But... It's more likely it's 105 or under. It's more likely that it's there. The higher end is unlikely, but time will tell. And look, I don't think he's a terrible selection, and I wouldn't say that just because you're picking Luke Ryan, your team's terrible.
But he does go on these little runs where he scores horrible, and at the end of
the other side of it, he goes in these huge runs where he just goes and explodes, and 140s.
His ceiling has been quite large for a while. He just pulls out these 140s, 150s, which is ridiculous. So he averaged 116 the last 13 rounds, which is extremely solid. He had 1300s, and he had 4 scores under 100. 3 of these were in the first 4 rounds, and those 4 scores were 52, 67, 79, and 67.
Yeah.
So after that, he was actually extremely durable, extremely high scoring. He had 6 scores of 120 plus, including a 131, a 142, and a 162. Mm-hmm. He's 25.
Yeah, still young.
Still young, and he came back in great nick as well, which is even better.
Excellent. Well, again, I think definitely one that you want to have a look at in draft.
Yep. And I think in draft, people might even skip past him to try and get one of these other guys. And I honestly feel, unless they're extremely Fremantle, Ryan fans, is that Whitfield, Laird will go before him, and then realistically, the round straight after, you'd be able to get Ryan.
Yeah. He does go. He always goes pretty early. People do see the upside because he's got such a good ceiling. So, it'd be interesting to see where he lands in your draft. But moving on, mate.
Yes, Andrew Brayshaw, 544K midfielder. He's a mid only this year, which does take away a lot of value. Some people see him killing it and they're like, oh, yes, he's taking the next level again. It's like, but he played midfield, scored 101.3 average.
And talk about his time on ground for the year.
Well, he increased his actual score by 30 points, 30.8 points. That's how much Supercoach he went up. Now, this is the real key part and the thing that Chris is excited about. He averaged 75.3% time on ground. That
is incredibly low for a guy that's about to hit his 3rd year.
Yes. And for someone who's meant to be an endurance machine, that's why he got picked up.
Yep. Now, the problem is he does need to work on his kicking. But, I mean, all Brayshaws need to work on their kicking. That's kind of what they do. But if he can get that up to premium midfielder status, which is another 13% or so, up to about 88 to 90% is where the really high-end
they're the ones that play
go.
Yeah, but they're the ones that play forward as well. Unless you're like Titch, generally speaking, even around that 84, 85 mark, if you can go up
another 10%, it's huge. The sky's the limit for Brayshaw. There is every chance that he comes out and he's a premium this year.
Well, the sky isn't the limit, Chris, because you go too high, you have to come back to earth.
That's true. It's not. There's not a song called "The Sky's Not the Limit," though. So look, can you select him in standard? Picking a breakout. There's no real signs that have told us that Brayshaw is going to be getting extra time on ground, that Brayshaw is going to be the main mover in the midfield.
At 544K, you might as well go Walsh or Cripps, and I would take either of those over Brayshaw.
Yeah, I still think he's a shoo-in for 100+ average, and he's going to have he's going to be a mainstay in that midfield.
For draft, I think you could pick him up pretty comfortably. Now, when you look at his stats, though, he did average 108 for the last 13 rounds, averaged 79 for the first 4, 86 for the last 4. So he is inconsistent in somewhat. However, the ceiling is what's interesting. So from round 5 to round 14, 144, 122, 102, 136, 106, 150, 67, 122, 115. I stuffed that up so bad. Hang on. I was about to say 150. But he can go on extremely good runs, has a good ceiling, and I think he's extremely consistent.
Yeah, I like him. I really do. I won't pick him in a standard, but he could be a guy that you upgrade to. I can definitely see him being a decent, say, M6 to M8, depending on what he's averaging. So we'll see how we go.
The real kicker with him, though, is he averaged 121.1 in wins versus 87.4 in losses.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
That's a big difference, 33.7. So if you see Fremantle improving and winning more games, then I think there could be some value there. Walters is the next one, and he's an extremely delight, and he is...
Oh, it's delicious, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, he is. He's great to watch.
Love to watch him. I can't believe I chose Isaac Heaney over him twice last year in draft leagues.
Oh, ouch, son.
Yeah, I have a thing for Heaney. But look, he's extremely good to watch. He's still a forward mid. He killed it at the start of last year. Absolutely killed it. Averaged 112 over his first 8. And then he averaged 82 over the last 6 rounds. And this was the disappointing part. I think once he got injured and came back, he wasn't really...
He always gets injured every year. He always gets injured. I think there's only been 1 year that he hasn't been injured. He's unfortunately unreliable, which is why it's got question marks over him as a forward. Even though he always seems to average all right and he can be super clutch and have a huge game, the next week he comes in and has a 50. And it's just, you can't do it. It's not something you can do. Like, he's not a reliable person that's going to win you a game on a week. He's just so up and down and just plays too much forward time. And unfortunately, there's not enough mid time now to go around.
No,
so
these younger players are now killing it. And if anything, I think Fife's probably first one in. And Walters, they'll need his goal sneak sense around the ground, around forward to centre. So
absolutely. And look, I mean, you're probably paying what you're going to get from him. You're probably going to get a 95 to 100 average out of Walters, maybe slightly over 100 at best.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually see him slipping to about a 90 flat. I don't know. Playing more forward, I still think he's great, but I think you'll find he won't have as big a games as he's had previously. They don't need him in the midfield anymore. He'll pinch hit when he needs, but I think...
He still plays well as a... he scores well as a forward, but it's just inconsistently.
Correct.
Yeah. Look, I think it's interesting either way. I don't think it's... Again, I don't think it's a terrible pick. Like, you can do a lot worse.
Oh, you could, yes.
He's just not a value pick. He's not something that I'm thinking he's not in my decision-making process for a forward. But I wouldn't hold it against you if you picked him.
Well, if he's available and there's people around him that are unders, then you kind of go, well... Yeah, you grab him.
I mean, it's that forward line, right? There's just so much value in the forward line. Spending 530 on a guy that's just going to be
29-year-old
around the mark. Yeah,
could be worse. Could be Monday. Next pick, 502K midfielder only. It's funny because I keep banking on him, kind of like the GameStop. Yeah, GameStop stocks there, trying to bank on him actually falling in averages, and he just keeps on disappointing me. 89 average in 2019, 93.4 this year, and he was someone you could have actually got for junk time in draft leagues. No one wanted him.
He had some big games too, so yeah. Look, obviously they're going to be phasing him out. He's old.
Yes.
But he's great to have on that list. He settles down the new kids. They've still got a lot of young youth coming through. I still think he's best 22 until proven otherwise, and I think he's got the right to be able to say that.
I think he has the right. I think he's more backup for me. He's there to help nourish and train these kids. I think he's more backup. I mean, you look at even time on ground, he went from 75% time on ground, which has been decreasing. This year, he actually went 71% time on ground. So he went down 4% in a short season, in shorter games. And for me, I think he's there for other benefits at the club.
Yeah, he's obviously good around the club, good trainer.
So in draft leagues, I'm going to double down and not pick Mundy, even though I respect him.
If at first you don't succeed, repeat the same mistakes you did last year.
Unless you go bankrupt. He's 35 years old, and for me, I don't think there's value picking a 35-year-old at a 93.4 average.
Oh, definitely not value.
No. Leave him for someone else and then applaud that pick.
But you'll find that he'll slide because of his age. So regardless, someone will say, oh, well.
Chris, I can't slide to save my life. My knees are hurt.
That's true.
Do the Dougie.
Teach me how to Dougie. Teach me how to Dougie. Sorry.
Next one, Adam Chera, 484K, midfielder only. So again, a lot of these players lost their forward eligibility. So Brayshaw, Chera, Akers, all lost their eligibility for forward.
Chera's a jet. It's all a matter of how much mid-time he gets. He's absolutely exquisite by foot, but sometimes he's played off the half back line or in a wing as opposed to in the middle.
Fuel the jet.
Fuel the jet. Brilliant user, which is great for Supercoach. Increased his average by 30 points per game this year, and this is the story of a lot of these guys. So it'll just depend on how much time he gets in the middle. Is he going to be in that starting three with Brayshaw and Sarong? Because I think those two are definitely locked into that absolute midfield mix. It's just now, okay, well, is it also going to be Chera, and how much in that midfield rotation is he going to be?
You know what hurts me? I actually picked him up in one of my probably second last picks in draft. And then he started off with some pretty bad scores the first 4 rounds, so I dumped him. And then he averaged 99 the last 10 rounds, 77 for the first 7. And I dumped him after 4 rounds. Someone else grabbed him and he went on an absolute heater, averaged 90 for the year.
Oh, tough.
Pretty good ceiling though. 500s, 113, 118, 121, 134, 134. So he can definitely rack it up. Can't go wrong, I think.
But obviously, I don't think it's someone that's going to be increasing his average, and there's no real evidence of it to warrant a selection in standard. Definitely a draft option, but that's about it.
Yep.
I suppose everyone else from here is really on the mid-pricer end.
Yeah, we'll kind of touch on them briefly. Yeah, a lot of mid-prices. Now, Chera, I think you could pick up, even if you got him around the 90, I think there's kind of room either side. So
I think there's room to improve.
There is room to improve. But if he disappoints, I can't see him going much below 85 anyway. So I don't think you're going to lose much if he doesn't do well. And I think that he could probably move up, anywhere from sort of that 4 to 10 points a game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can't see him averaging over 100.
No, but I can't see him going below an 85 either.
Yeah.
So in draft leagues, he's pretty standard.
Yep.
Okay, so now let's have a quick little touch on Akers is 453K. Don't touch in standard. Even avoid in draft, man. That guy's body is held together with clag glue. And I'll tell you what, it's acres and acres of clag glue.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of it.
It's a lot of it. Look, if people ignore him and he stands out, then yes, he did average 107 the last 4 rounds. Probably plays on the wing. So if he looks okay and people ignore him, then sure, jump on. He can average 80, better than an 84. However, he can also spend 3/4 of the year on the sidelines. So
classic Akers.
Yep. I'd much rather
Blakers.
Blakers.
You can press that button.
The hell?
That's not the button I wanted you to press.
No, it's not Blakers. Okay, so I would much rather Caleb Sarong, 435K. Again,
absolutely.
I'm seeing people picking these guys in standard. I'm like, Sarong, yes, he's great. And only Clayton Oliver can really bang it out in the second year in recent history, except for Rao 2021. Now, I don't know, Sarong, he could get the role. He could definitely get the role, which means that he might not be a bad option. In draft, you could definitely pick him over the 81.1. In standard, though, I'm not paying 435K for someone and hoping that they're going to develop to what they could be.
Mm-hmm. I agree. There's no real evidence of what's happening there. I think he will be playing more midfield. I definitely think he averages more, but there's no chance in hell that I would be banking on it, especially in standard.
He was already low time on ground. He averaged 70.1% time on ground.
That'll increase.
That will increase. Now, he did average 90 over his last 10 rounds with scores of 94, 96, 114, 118, 122. Mm-hmm. I think, he's someone that you could throw in there, and an 81 in draft he is definitely relevant.
Look, he's one that, you watch him, and if he could be a round 3 special, in which case, and what I mean by that is a guy that absolutely smashes it in rounds 1 and 2, and then you're like, when you have your corrective trades, there might be, say, a premium or a mid-pricer around that price that you can sideways trade to him and then collect him on the up. There's just no way that I'd bank on that from round one. I just don't see the value in that at all.
No. Sean Darcy is an interesting one. If you get extremely stuck for a ruck and in a deep league, I could see it then. I think there's probably still a lot of better options. Injured as well, yes.
Well, yeah, I don't think is he going to be playing round one? I don't think he will be.
I don't know. I think it'll be touch
Meek
and go.
probably lines up round one, but
or Lob might.
But that could be good because it means that he'll slip out of the pecking order when people are picking rucks, and you can just pick him up super late.
Yep.
Or even on your bench.
The reason I say that is Darcy. He's 22. He averaged 95 for the last 8 rounds last year. He's only played 41 games as a ruck. So you look at, he's young. Rucks take a bit longer to develop. Tapping down to a pretty good midfield, I think he could actually be a real sleeper. If you're one of those guys that gets stuck and you're last on the boat in draft and you're like, you know what, stuff it, I'll just pick up a couple of 2 rucks that maybe are a bit so-so and then just watch how they go, you could try and pick up someone like that. So
yeah, fair enough.
Same as Rory Lobb, actually forward ruck eligible, not too bad on the swing. He did drop by about 10 points in average compared to 2019. He only had 190 400s in 2020. So he's an interesting one for me. He played every game. Now, it's one of those things, he can pinch hit in the ruck. I don't think he does too much time in the ruck. And I don't know, he's a funny one for me, Chris.
Rory Lobb?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think from memory, he has intended rate of contested marks is one of the highest in the AFL. He's absolutely fantastic forward. And he also has a really good hit out to advantage rate. But for whatever reason, he just can't string it together for a full season. He's just a strange one. I mean, I'd definitely take a punt as his forward ruck.
Correct.
In a draft, you'd definitely take a punt on him.
As your last forward, or even if you could sneak
easy.
him on the bench. Yeah. Because that way, 77 as your last forward with that swing eligibility.
He's got a really high ceiling. He can really take some hangers, kick some important goals, get some hit outs. He's got a rounded game, but then he just doesn't show up one week. Like, that's kind of what happens.
That's fair.
A couple I want to talk about, mate. Connor Blakely at 295. Now, what the hell is happening with Connor Blakely? Because 3 years ago, he came on, he lit up the midfield. He was going gangbusters. Last season, pre-season, they said, yep, we're going to be starting Connor Blakely up in the midfield. Season rolls around, doesn't start in midfield. Barely gets any time on ground. Only plays 5 games. Is he even best 22 anymore? Or is he completely out of there?
Well, I think they trained him too hard, Chris.
Why is that?
Well, because it's more like Connor break me.
That doesn't work, but the sound effect almost made it worth it, but it still was shit. I respect your effort, though. And I'm not going to be one here to criticise you on your effort. Look, I don't know.
Who knows what happened to him?
He's not in their best mid-mix. Is he a rotational mid-mix? Is there a piece that they have off the bench?
Well, here's the funny thing, though. He's still really young, or at least he was before he turned shit. He could be anything, and he could definitely be a role player. It wouldn't surprise me if they actually tried to make him into someone who is a bit more accountable, because it's like, well, you can still get the contested ball, and now we kind of want you to stop someone at the same time. So, well, I don't know.
He's at that price where it's almost worth a punt if you're really searching for a mid-pricer, but I can't see it it's not going to fit anywhere in my standard team. But maybe someone, again, really deep league, you're like, look, pick Connor Blakely up, chuck him on your bench, give him 6 weeks and see what happens. Who knows with him right now? And I think there's just not enough information to make an affirmative call on him. And the other one that I want to talk about is Hayden Young, obviously. So only played the 5 games last year. If he's available and fit, I think he'll play every single game this year. He was a prodigious young talent. I think he averaged 107 in the NAB League the year before as a rebounding defender. So he's just got every chance to make it in the AFL. And I do think that they'll look to get the ball in his hands. He goes hard at it. So averaging 52 last year, not really good enough. I personally am not going to be taking a punt, but I know people who are looking around that price, the same as Miller's price point. There's 20K, I think, difference between there, or maybe 30. They're looking for that sort of mid-price to take that next step.
I think Miller takes rank, though. I think he's shown a little bit more and has probably a little bit more potential to average that sort of high 80s or low 90s. I'm not surprised though. Hayden Young, I am actually interested. Not so much for standard. I mean, I don't think I have the kahunas that deep, but he was injured on, I think it was, 15 or 1 Supercoach in round 6. Dropped his average a lot. His true average is closer to 65. For me...
So you get a bit of value there.
A little bit of value. And for me, even in a deep league or in a keeper league, I would actually be really interested in trying to pick him up late in a deep league, or in a keeper league, definitely hold him or try and snake him if you can, because he's going to be a prestigious talent in the future.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if he actually averaged close to 80 or just over this year.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not going to pick him at an 80 average, but if it's one of those deep leagues...
I think 80 is very attainable for him.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, for standard, is that enough as a stepping stone to a premium? It might be. It might be enough.
It might be.
Because a couple of big games, all of a sudden he's 400K.
And not only that, there's actually not too many mid-price defenders this year. You're better off going mid-price forwards. There's a plethora. There's too many mid-price forwards that you could jump on, right? Whereas in defence, you're kind of looking at Cumming, Young, and Miller. And I think that's kind of about it. There's not much. You kind of need to go more guns and rookies or one mid-pricer in that position.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I like the big four in defence this year. So to me, I won't be looking at mid-prices in defence, but I can see people doing it. So,
do you ignore your thumb?
What? I'm confused. What?
The big four. You ignore your thumb?
Oh, that was it.
That was a thumb joke.
Where's the wow? No. It did not deserve the symbol.
It's not my fault you don't get it, Chris.
All good.
You better lock it up. You lock it up. Lock it up.
I do agree, though, for everything else there. Sturt is interesting. He was injured on 11 in round 3. He had an average of 87 otherwise, so he is someone who could pull it together. And I don't have too much faith in that, but again, in a deep league, he is interesting. And for me, Tucker, I think...
Yeah, in draft, Tucker's a real smoky.
Highly underrated. He averaged... What did he average?
He's
70?
talented.
He is.
He's a great player. I think he's super underrated.
Very underrated, and it would not surprise me. So again, in a deep league, I think Tucker is my smoky. And if he doesn't do well, you could always just tuck him away.
Boy, oh boy, wow-wee. What is going on?
No, you didn't. Now, the good thing about Tucker is he was injured on, what was that? It's at 0. So he did a hamstring really early in round 8 and didn't return. So that gives him quite a lot of value. It immediately gives him about a 7-point bump in average. So you are getting him cheap. And look, if you're looking into your draft, someone that you can take a little bit higher, but you're probably going to be able to pick him up on your bench even better.
Yep.
I love it.
They did say he's been at the club working on his running and fitness as he continues his recovery from hamstring injury. So for me, he's still probably a little bit away at this point. So
that's frustrating.
Yeah, ouchie.
Well, that pretty much rounds out Freo.
Yes, it does. So thank you very much for joining us. Next, I believe we'll have the Geelong Cats, Chris.
Yeah, Geelong.
Yes,
that'd be an interesting pod.
And let's hope you show up for quicker and longer than they did in the grand final.
That's impossible. Actually, to be fair, our podcast usually goes for about 35 minutes.
Yeah, it could be accurate.
Yeah, exactly.
Half time,
right.
maybe they'll leave us. Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, guys.
Alrighty, bye.
Bye.